Oh, hello, my lovely, and welcome to this week's episode of Lotus Life the Podcast. My name is Rose Tautari, and I am, among many things in this lifetime, a human design guide, a soul mentor, an author, and a podcaster. And this is a show where each week we get to hang out and chat about all things human design. I'm here to teach you how you can thrive in your most aligned life by empowering yourself to understand your unique soul's purpose. Human design is a beautiful synthesis bringing together ancient wisdom and modern science, and is a way of understanding the contract between your soul and the universe for who you came here to be, what you came here to do, and what karma you came to correct this lifetime around. This podcast, Lotus Life, is a celebration of embodying the lotus flower, which is incredibly beautiful and blooms and thrives, growing from even the murkiest and muddiest of conditions in life. A perfect metaphor for us imperfectly perfect human beings, right? Get ready to lotus your life. So this week's episode is going to be part one in a 3-part series that I'm going to run through with you, talking all about the different centers or chakras within the human design chart. So what I'm talking about here is when you take a look at your human design chart, all the different shapes that are either colored in or white within that body graph chart that you're looking at. So what I'm going to do is this week, I'm going to be covering the defined centers and running through what each of those, if they're colored in, what that means within your chart as a broad overview, so you can kind of think of these like the sort of touch notes that you can return to really easily, or just have your chart in hand while you're listening, and you can just get a sense of what those aspects and characteristics that are within you and available to you consistently. And then next week, I'm going to be talking about the undefined centers within the body graph, what that means. And then thirdly, the week after, I'll be talking about open centers. So those are the ones that have no lines attached to them at all. They're completely open, and that each of these different variations that you can have within your chart, that you have one variation of these for each of your chakras, and it's fixed within you. It's what you consistently have at your kind of, within yourself in this lifetime, and just allows you to kind of get a sense of within each of these, what is your unique makeup? What are your defined centers? What are your undefined centers? And do you have any open centers? And after listening to these episodes, you'll be able to make sort of sense of how that all pieces together for you, because there's fantastic wisdom about ourselves and our own gifts and our own magic that can come just purely by understanding that broad level of what centers, what chakras are doing what within ourselves. So first up this week, I'm going to be touching on defined centers. So firstly, I just want to explain what a defined center or chakra actually means, so that if you're kind of not sure what all this lingo actually translates to when you're taking a look at your human design chart, don't worry, I got you. So when you look at all those shapes that are either triangles or squares within your human design chart, there will be some that are colored in and there will be some that are white. So today we're only talking about each of the shapes, which corresponds to a chakra, or often in human design it's referred to as a center. And we're only going to be talking about the characteristics for each of those if it is colored in. So obviously you will have a combination of the two. You might have nearly everything colored in. That's cool. You might have nearly everything white. That's also cool. So what I want you to think about as we're talking through this is to essentially cherry pick out the sections that I'm going to talk about that relate to your chart. It's really beneficial to know the other, I guess, corresponding variation. Say you have one of these centers today that I'm going to talk about and it's white, it's not defined. but it's really useful to know what that looks like in someone else when they have it defined. So essentially start with what is defined within your chart, what is colored in, and then we'll move forward over the next couple of weeks. So you can start to build that picture of what it is that you've got going on beautifully inside you at all times. So what does defined mean? Essentially, it means it's only colored in within your chart, and there's no... I often get the question of, does the color mean anything? Because obviously different human design chart software systems use different colors. And it's not that there's a traffic light system or anything like that if it's, say, brown, it means one thing and then there could potentially be another color. No, it's just either white or colored in. There's no variation of color that it can be depicted as within your chart. So essentially, the colors don't actually mean anything. They don't translate to anything. It just helps to differentiate between the different shapes when you're looking at your chart at a glance and first getting comfortable with it. Because obviously if everything was just colored in the same color, when you're first getting to grips with human design, it could be a little bit confusing or easy to mistake one of the centers for another. For example, when you're talking about your root chakra and your sacral chakra, they're both depicted as a sort of square shape within your chart and they're right next to each other. So that's why one is depicted as brown and one is depicted as red in a lot of the traditional human design software, just to help differentiate the two. So when there is a colored in shape, so we'll talk about chakras or centers, that means that center for you has got characteristics of its own that are fixed within you and that you consistently have access to. So it doesn't mean that on the corresponding level that if it is white within your chart, it doesn't mean that you don't have those characteristics. Not at all. It doesn't mean that you don't have that within you. It just means that it won't be consistent. Whereas when it's defined, it means that it's kind of yours to tap into at any moment that you choose. Whereas the white centers, it tends to come and go. It's ephemeral. You can't really sort of rely on it to always be there working for you. So when the central chakra is defined, what that means is that essentially there will be a channel, which when you look at your chart, whatever center is colored in, there will be a full channel, which means that there's like a complete linkage between that center and another center, and the two will be joined together completely. There will be a lot of lines that kind of going to only go halfway and are kind of hanging there on their own that are red and black within your chart. So you're looking for the ones that you will see that where there's a colored in center, it will always have a complete channel linking it to another center that will also be what I tend to refer to when I'm giving a reading as lit up. So that means that it's almost like the two are connected like light bulbs in a circuit. That's the only way in which a center can be defined, is when it is completely linked, has got a full channel going all the way through to another center, and the two are kind of holding hands, so to speak, and they're both lit up, they're both colored in. And there can be many variations of this. You can have multiple centers linked by multiple channels. So this is where it gets really beautiful to understand that there can be many connections. There can be only one. There are a lot of people, particularly projectors, who've only got maybe two of their centers defined within their chart. A lot of generators, the same. And that means they'll only have one full channel going between two centers, and those are the only two that are colored in within their chart, and the rest of it will be white. And then there's other people who have got, just about every single center colored in. So there is no one is better than the other. Just means that, as we always talk about, that this is your completely unique and brilliant makeup that is entirely your own. This is the bit I just absolutely adore, that it is so empowering to know that out of the, many, many, many different variations we can have within our human design charts. Yours is entirely unique to you. Even sets of twins born, 10 minutes apart have got variations within their human design charts at the real detailed level. So it is so wonderful. It's so magical to understand this about yourself. So where you have those centers that are colored in within your chart, that means that you've got that attribute or characteristics that you can tap into consistently. And what that means is that through that center or that chakra, you've got a bit of an energetic buffer going on against the outside world. It basically means that you kind of got your own little force field around that part of you, and you're not necessarily going to be taking on the energetics of someone else through that particular center. Where you have white in your chart, that's the places that you will be taking on the energetics of the outside world. So the more colored in centers you've got, it essentially means you've got more of an energetic buffer against the outside world. And again, neither is better or worse than the other. It's just purely starting to understand how you uniquely work. So today we're talking about all the ones that are defined. And if they show up in your chart, for example, then you can cherry pick out of this episode the certain attributes and things I'm going to talk about for each center, and you can start to interweave and go, okay, I have, say, these 3 centers colored in or defined within my chart. So I now know what attributes I've got that I'm kind of consistently able to tap into coming from there. And then over the next couple of weeks, you'll be able to complete the rest of the puzzle with your other parts of your other centers in your chart as well. So if you're ready, let's dive on in. So we're going to start from the very top of your human design body graph, the chart, and work our way down. So we're firstly going to start with the head center or the crown chakra. This is right at the very top. It's kind of self-explanatory. It's right at the top of the head in that outline of the human form that you'll see within your chart. And it's the triangle shape that is facing upwards. Now, if this is colored in, so remember, we're only talking these attributes, I'm going to talk about only relate to you if this is colored in for you. So if this part of your chart is white, you can just kind of feel free to listen, but it's not the attributes that you will have in your chart. And same goes for all the other chakras that we're going to talk about after this. But so if this is colored in for you, remember that this is a pressurized center in your body. So this head center, crown chakra, is one of the 2 places in which our chi, our life force, comes in through our system and is kind of put under pressure in order to push it through the rest of our energetic body. So that's why, in that sense, when we talk about mental pressure, the pressure to think on things, the pressure to make decisions, this is kind of where that's coming from. It's a pressurized part of us. So there's always going to be that sensation that it's kind of under the pump a little bit. So the head center, the crown chakra, is particularly focused on our inspiration and also questions and also doubts. So with a defined head center here, you will be typically that person who's got kind of a fixed way of thinking about things. And that's okay, because that's where you've got an energetic buffer that will be essentially one of the many tools that you've come here with in this lifetime in order to go about the purpose that you came here with. There are some people who are here to have the openness, and there are some people who need to come here with that sort of energetic buffer for them to be able to go about living the purpose that they need to go about creating the magic that they need to. So there'll be when I talked before about that constant kind of mental pressure going on within you, that'll be consistent for you. So you'll always feel that kind of busy brain syndrome going on, trying to grasp at things, trying to understand things, and it can get really existential. It can get down to even like, I need to try and grasp and understand what is consciousness in itself. It can get really big picture really quickly with that sort of pressure to understand. And really what you also have going on here is to understand that for this center to be defined, it means you also have your Ajna defined that we're going to talk about in a moment, which is the triangle shape that is immediately below that head center that is facing downwards. So for the head center to be defined, the other corresponding Ajna center has to be defined as well, because the two have to link, they have to hold hands, and that will mean that your channel between these two will either be the lines meeting between the 64 and 47, or the 61 and 24, or the 63 and 4, or you may have more than one of these, So it's understanding that that is the way in which that head center can only be illuminated, lit up, for example, is when the Ajna is also defined as well. So it doesn't matter if the lines are red, they're black, or a combination of both red and black. It just means that there will be a complete join in one of those channels or multiple of those three channels. So one of the ways you can support yourself with having a defined head center is to just kind of learn to witness and accept that you are someone who's got a lot of pressure going on inside your headspace. You are going to have constant questions, so many questions. Like whenever I give a reading for someone who has got their defined head center, and we often laugh a lot about the fact that there is just so many questions going on inside their mind at all times, and that's okay. It's kind of coming to an understanding and allowing yourself to have that, allowing yourself to feel that pressure without feeling the need to have to act on it. It's kind of a challenge. It's kind of a balance, but as we know that often these things that once we start to sort of rise above the feeling like we just need to get rid of the pressure and learn to go, actually, you know what? This is just a true part of me, and this is going to always be with me. And rather than feeling like it's something I have to get rid of, I can actually start to learn to use it and to know it's there. It's kind of like a trusty friend that's always hanging around, that is always going to be there. So, the wisdom comes from kind of not fighting it anymore and just going, actually, you know what? I am going to have lots of pressure. I'm always going to have questions. So I'm not going to judge myself for that, because that's part of why I am who I am, and that's my true self. So let's now go and talk about the Ajna Center, which is essentially the mind, it's our awareness center, and it's our third eye chakra. It's the downward facing triangle that is immediately below the head or the crown, and in some human design software this will be colored in green. So when you have a defined Ajna, you don't necessarily have to have your head center defined. So when I just talked about before that the head center or crown chakra will only be defined if the Ajna is connected, with the Ajna, it can be connected to the throat, and the head center can be white. So, you might want to take a look at your chart and see which of those variations you are. So you will either have this green downward facing triangle connected to the head, or it will be connected to the throat, or it can be connected to both. So you might have all three at the top of your chart lit up and colored in. So there's lots of variations that can go on here. So as I said before, this is your mind consciousness. This is your third eye chakra. And when this is defined, think of this as your kind of ability to think of concepts in a consistent way. You're not necessarily easily influenced by other people's perspectives or their presence, but you do in turn have the gift of inspiring others with your perspectives and your presence. So you can influence kind of the way that other people think about things simply by showing up and kind of just being you. So this is one to really get comfortable with understanding that this again it's not pressurized, but it's the flow of pressure coming from the crown chakra. And this is particularly a center that is the real hub of the busyness. So I have this defined within my human design, and this is one that I always love to touch on for anyone else who has got this center defined within their chart. Your mind is always switched on. And it's really difficult. In fact, it is fucking challenging to meditate with this center defined, because your mind is just like this hub of activity at all times. It's very much tapped into the divine because it's got downloads coming in all the time with the center defined. And it's kind of like a riot going on in there some days. I always joke about how when I first started on my meditation journey, I gave up so many times because I was like, I would try and do the whole sit there and just still my mind. You know, all these gurus who are like, no, just go and find a quiet corner and sit on your meditation pillow and just close your eyes and clear your mind. And I would close my eyes and it was like there was a band of monkeys in there having an all-night rave, you know, with the whistles and the glow sticks and like, you know, it was just impossible. And I'm going, what the fuck? Like, why are these people saying that it's this really simple thing to do? So if you have a defined ajna, this is going to be, you know, chances are you're going to find the same thing. So I always say that even though your mind's activity is always on a roll, practices like mindfulness and meditation are actually more important for people with defined ajna centers, because you need to find those tools that you can use that allow you to still your mind, but do it in the way that is right for you. Don't try and follow somebody else's, 3 steps to meditation. Use guided meditations. Think of your mind as like a puppy that needs a toy, right? It needs something to do. Otherwise, it's just going to, if it's left to its own devices, then you're going to come home and all your slippers are going to be chewed up, right? So give yourself the permission to use guided meditations. Allow yourself your mind to follow something, to give it that pathway to walk along so that it's not just kind of left to its own devices. And also don't get disheartened if it's really fucking hard. Like, persevere, start really small, like even if it's something as simple as like 2 minutes, and build that muscle up, because it's so worthwhile, because it does help to kind of, I like to think of it like, without meditation, my defined ajna is like, if you can picture walking into an office where there's like paper stacked on every surface and things look like they're about to fall off, and some piles have fallen off and onto the floor and all the paper is spilled out everywhere, and there's, like a spilled cup of coffee across half of the desk, and, shit's everywhere, right? Whereas when I meditate and when I am practicing mindfulness daily, everything goes back to where it should be. And I'm able to make sense and order of all of that noise going on, has kind of got more of an order to it. It's not a big jumbled mess. It's kind of all gone back to where it's supposed to be. So it doesn't mean that my mind gets less busy. In fact, it probably opens up more space for more downloads, but that's okay, because it means that I've kind of filed everything away where it needs to be. So I hope that kind of helps if you do have a defined ajna, to understand that it's not a curse, it's a blessing. It's 100% a blessing, but just find your tools and your practices to support yourself, because it is very, very busy in there. And, whether that's, I strongly do encourage meditating, but, whether it's something as simple as starting out by journaling, just to get things out of your mind and onto paper. If you're lying in bed at night and your mind is like going blah, 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 like mine often does, grab, your diary or your journal or even your phone and just write it all down. Like, I'll often, go, oh my God, I just have to get this out of my mind. And I'll grab my phone, open up the notes app, and I'll just type it all down, put my phone away, and then it's like my mind can go, done. I can relax now. Sleep time. It just needs that way of filing it, getting it out and downloading it, because there is a lot of downloads going on. So as I said, with the ajna, this can be connected to your head center, the two of those centers can actually be connected, and then there can be no connection going down to the throat. And so you can see this below the Ajna is whether you have full channels going all the way between the Ajna and the throat center, which is the square shape right below that. In some charts that'll be colored in brown. Or it might be that the crown chakra and the Ajna are connected, but they kind of sit up at the top of your head on their own, like a little pairing. If that's the case, whatever's going on for you inside your mind, the mystery, the attributes, the questions, the doubts, the inspiration, the ideas, the creativity, if there's no connection to your throat chakra, then you can actually kind of just enjoy it for yourself. It's kind of like a fun little, almost like selfish attribute that you can keep within yourself. And you might express your inspiration, ideas, thoughts, through something other than the written, spoken word. It might be through writing, art, music, whatever the case may be, but you don't kind of have any pressure there to actually give it out to the world. However, your Ajna can be connected to your throat center. So this is between the green downward facing triangle and the brown square shape at your throat. So that there's 3 channels that this could be connected by. So it would be between the 17 and the 62, the 43 and the 23, or it could be the 11 and the 56. You might have one, you might have multiple. That's how you can know whether your Ajna is connected to your throat. And like I say, you can have that connected to your throat, and your crown, your head center, can be completely white. Now, when your Ajna is connected to your throat through one of those 3 channels that I just mentioned, this is a really beautiful gift of being able to speak your mind. Like, you can literally speak straight from your mind, straight from what's going on in there. And it's a consistent trait that you will tap into. And it's really interesting when we start to dive into some of the things around our different kinds of natural gifts and intelligence that we've got, is that, if this is the case for you and these two are holding hands, you can kind of start to see how you might be that type of person who, when you are asked for your opinion on something or to speak on something, you might typically use words like "I think," or something along those lines about like the way I think about this. However, when you've got other centers that are kind of connected to your throat, it might be things like "I feel," or "I sense," or, "I know." So it's really beautiful when we start to look at which chakras, which centers are connected to our throat, because then we can start to really see how, actually I'm speaking from whichever of these centers is completely linked and defined, and it's consistent for me. So the throat chakra that's sitting right there below your Ajna, it's essentially, think of this as like if the entire body is a town, the throat is kind of like the town square. It's the central hub. It's where all the energy is flowing. So you've got your pressurized centers that are pushing our life force, our energy through us. And the throat is literally the place where that energy is expressing itself, releasing from our bodies and manifesting quite literally through the power of our voice. Now, if this is defined for you, about 72% roughly have their throat center defined, which means it's colored in. So if this center for you is white, just know that you're within the 30% of the world who have this either undefined, or even then a very, very minute portion within that have it completely open. So we'll touch on those in the coming weeks. But, for most of the world, they have a defined throat. So this is why for many people, they are able to kind of consistently speak to something. They have got attributes within them that allow them to consistently, I guess, make use of that pressure that is coming through their throat center in a way that they can consistently discharge that pressure by using their words. They can communicate or they can act upon what is going on for them energetically. And obviously it's the way in which we attract attention, through using our voice, and we manifest through our words, our communication. It's the literal manifestation of our thoughts, our feelings, when we're able to express through this center. So it's kind of understanding that when you take a look at the throat chakra, there are a lot of channels and lines that could potentially come from this center. So it's really a hub for taking a look at, if this center is defined for you, what are the other centers around it that are linked completely. So they're completely linked, and there's a line going all the way through. So you'll see when you take a look at your body graph, the chart, like I just mentioned before, you've got 3 channels that could potentially link with your Ajna that are straight above the throat. You've then got, going off to the left-hand side, there's 2 longer lines that are heading down towards your splenic center, which is on the left-hand side, the inward-facing triangle on the left. You've got 3 that are coming straight down, and actually, sorry, I should say 4 that come down and could connect with the diamond shape that is straight below the throat, the G center. You've got 1 that can potentially link up with the heart center, which is the smallest triangle shape. Then you've got 2 that on the right hand side that go all the way down and link up potentially with the emotional center, the solar plexus, which is on the right hand side, the inward facing triangle on the right hand side of the chart. So you've got a lot of centers that potentially could be defined and lit up because they are completely linked with the throat. And like I was saying, that if any of those are directly linked, doesn't matter whether it's a red or a black channel, or whether there's a combination in there of red and black, it just means that you are essentially able to speak directly from that center. So there's some really powerful stuff that you can start to kind of decode about yourself, and obviously understanding that, say for you, for example, your combination of what you are essentially able to speak to is unique to you. So your best friend might also have their defined throat, but they might be able to speak from their emotions, for example, whereas you might have it completely connected to your mind, and that's the only center that it's connected to. So you speak from your mind, your friend speaks from their emotions, and that's perfectly fine for you to have that difference between the two of you. It's unique to you. Those were the gifts that you inherently came here with to carry out your purpose, because chances are your purpose is more related to using that attribute of speaking from your mind, speaking from those downloads, whereas your friend might be someone who came here with that gift of that emotional intelligence to be able to share with others how they can touch base with their emotions, how they can feel their emotions in an empowered way. So I hope that makes sense in terms of understanding how that all flows together. So now we're going to go and talk about some of the other centers that are below the throat. So we're going to start first with the G center, which is straight down below the throat. It's the big diamond shape. And if this is defined for you in your chart, in many of the software types, it'll be lit up as a yellow diamond. Now, if this is defined for you, it doesn't necessarily have to connect to the throat. There are other centers that this can connect to. So when I talk about things being connected to the throat, that's only if there is a complete channel linking the two. However, all these next centers we're going to talk about from now on, they can be defined and nothing can be connected to the throat, right? You can have all of these centers that we're going to go on to talk about holding hands with each other, so to speak, and there can be no connection up the top, right? You can have your head, your ajna, your throat all completely white and only have centers or chakras within you that are illuminated or lit up that are down sort of in the lower part of your chart. So just know that whatever makeup is perfectly fine for you. There is no one is better than another or one is right or wrong. It is all unique to you. Now the G center, this is your what I like to call your identity center. When this is defined, you are essentially tapped straight on into the universe through this part of you. It's a very magnetic attribute to have within you, and it is kind of like where you connect into the flow of life. It kind of pulls you through life, and I like to describe it as kind of being hardwired straight into the universe. It's like having one of those rather than relying on Wi-Fi that can kind of drop in and out. You've got the cord that's like plugged straight in, and it's ultra fast broadband, right? So think about that this is a gift that is the gift of sharing love. It's all to do with loving life, love of self, higher self, heart, compassion. So it is really a gift that comes from here, is not only something that you can use for yourself, right? In understanding a love of the self, a love of the physical self, just having that wisdom about self-love. But you can also use this for others. Many people I talk to who, if I give a reading, they have this center defined. Quite often they might have some component of their purpose, their mission, what they're here to do relates to having this G center defined. And it's really beautiful because they will have a really strong connection to that sense of self-love or self-compassion that not only is for themselves to use and kind of revel in consistently, but to be able to guide others on their own self-love journey, to be able to show them the gift of, essentially being tapped into that higher self that everybody has. It's just that with a defined G center, you've kind of got that broadband connection going on that is plugged in. Whereas for other people, if their center is undefined here, then chances are theirs will be a bit more ephemeral and so on. And we'll talk about that next week in the undefined centers episode. So if this is defined for you, it'll be lit up and it can be connected to other centers, as I say, that are going on down lower in the chart. So you've got connections that could go up to the throat. You've got 3 channels going up, the 31 to the 7, 8 to 1, 33 to 13, which would mean that if any of those are illuminated, and the 20 to 10 that are illuminated, that means your G center is connected straight to your throat. And then conversely, it can go, you've got a channel going across the 25 to the 51 that could be to your heart center. Got the 10 that can then kind of connect to other combinations to the 57, could go the 10 to the 34, and that would mean you're either tapped into your splenic center or your sacral center. And then you've got going straight down to your sacral center as well. You've got the 15 to the 5, the 2 to the 14, the 46 to the 29. So you can look at any of those combinations to go, okay, which centers are holding hands here with my G center, my higher self, and know what's tapped into where for you. So now we're going to go and talk about the smallest triangle shape that is right next to your beautiful G center. This is the heart center or ego center, as it's sometimes referred to in human design. You could consider this your heart chakra as well. But in human design, as you will have seen, the chakra system has sort of been evolved since probably what many of us familiar with. There's 9 centers within the human design body graph. So it talks about how some of these chakras that are traditionally referred to have evolved. We've got more within us. I think I saw something the other day that was talking about, having upwards of like 26, 30, chakras. Like we've got so many within us that are beyond the traditional chakra system that we are most familiar with. So as I always say with human design, take what works for you, leave what doesn't. If this center does or doesn't resonate for you in terms of if you're more comfortable with the traditional chakra system, that's okay. Just think of this as another part of you that is a center within you. If you don't want to refer to it as a chakra, it's got attributes, it's got things that are within you, and if this center is white in your chart, then probably what I'm going to talk about next is going to be kind of like, whoa, what are you talking about? But if this is defined for you, I really want you to pause what you're doing and just pay attention, because if you have a defined heart center, you kind of need a bit of loving to recognize the unique gift that is within you. Only about 30% of the world have this center defined within them. And so that means that most of the world around you doesn't have a clue how this feels, and possibly it's a type of energy that comes from here. It's a motor center, and it can really kind of trigger some people. So if you have this defined within you, just know that it can kind of give off its own energy before you even speak up. So if you feel like you've kind of have people get offside with you before you've even opened your mouth just by being you, this is what I'm talking about, because this is kind of one that it's the home of willpower. It's the home of our ego. But in human design terms, when we refer to ego, it's kind of like a healthy expression of what do I want, that ego of what do I want in life, what am I consistently driven and motivated towards, is what we're referring to here, more so than probably what is traditionally referred to in self-development terms as the egoic self that we kind of get told we're supposed to sort of try and eliminate or no longer feed into from a fear-based sort of system within ourselves. This is more to do with if you have this center defined, it's more to do with kind of like desire, drive, willpower, motivation, and it's the love of like the material world, success, abundance, material things. So it's kind of got those attributes that, as I say, if you've got this defined within you, you're kind of giving off that power of like, I am someone who is really fucking driven to chase my goals. This is an energy of, I have a consistent drive every single fucking day to go out and go after what I am here to do and be and embody and have. So that's why when I say like, you need to probably give yourself a bit of love, because 70% of the world around you kind of can sense that energy and goes, whoa, 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 we're all out here kind of like chilling out with our willpower and desire that kind of comes and goes and is like ephemeral, and we don't know whether it's going to turn up one day or the other. And it's like they come across you with your strong will and your willpower to go after what you're here to go after. And it's really healthy for you to use that and express it, because that drive will be consistent within you every single day. And just know that with a defined heart center here, you are in the 30% who have got that ability to tap into that drive, that consistency that is only unique for you, really. And it's also understanding that your drive, your motivation doesn't have to be the highest or the strongest, for example. There might be other people who have got a stronger drive or determination than you, like, every day. But you have a consistent level that is consistent for you. So it's kind of just knowing that yours might not be the highest or the most powerful, but yours will be consistent. And you will wake up every single day with that attribute within you to go after your goals, to go after your dreams, to chase down what is meant to be yours in this lifetime. And have that willpower to do so. And it's really healthy for you to express that. Other people, I'll just say, because we'll touch on this more next week, their undefined heart center or open heart center means that they only kind of tap into their drive or desires on like a wave. It comes and goes. So as a defined heart center, if you hear people talk about, the consistency that begets success, for example, that these are the habits of highly effective people, that they get up every single day and they do this and they chase that, and they have these powerful rituals and routines every single day to go after their goals. For you, that will be entirely correct to sort of live your life in that lane. So if other people around you are perhaps kind of going, oh, but can't you just chill out? Can't you just like drop it? Can't you just leave it alone today? Actually, for you, it's probably the worst thing you can do, because it will feel so unaligned for you to drop your desires for one day, when actually that's what lights you up and that's what really drives you towards your goals, and you kind of like, that's your fire that's burning within you. So one of the things as well, apart from that, is to just kind of understand that if this is defined within you, within your chart, just watch that you're not judging yourself for having that desire to chase success or fame or monetary abundance, even like down to wanting material things. Like, please don't judge yourself for that, because it is actually what your soul came here to do and embody and be in this lifetime. And it is completely correct for you to have all of those things in mind every single day. And that's what drives you. So don't allow the judgments or pressure or conditioning from society to kind of get in your head, because that drive and that desire will always be true for you. Because remember, you've got an energetic buffer here. The chances are that those judgments and other things have come in through the open or undefined centers in your chart that are elsewhere, that have kind of smothered that drive or desire. So this is one that I like for people who've got this defined within their chart. The 30% of you, I do love to just kind of nourish you a little bit with that empowering understanding of your true self. So now let's go and talk about the two centers that are kind of straight down below the G center. We're going to talk about the Sacral center first, which is straight below the G center, the diamond in the center. And this is the square shape that is second up from the very base of the chart, right? So when I was talking right at the start about the difference between the root center often being depicted as a brown shape, and then the sacral center is depicted often as a red square that is the second up. So it helps to kind of differentiate the two. So we're talking about the sacral center, the sacral chakra, which, as I say, is often depicted as a red square within your chart. Now, the key thing to know here is that if this is defined for you, hey, you're either a generator or a manifesting generator. You sacral beings are the only type that has this center defined. So projectors, reflectors, manifestors, you can kind of just listen in for the next few minutes when we talk about the sacral chakra, because you guys don't have this defined at all. There's no way you can have it defined. So let's talk about the attributes that come from here that make you a sacral being, my lovely generators and many gens listening in. So this is that home of your life force energy, right? And if you've had a reading with me, you'll understand that we talk about a lot about this, because it's kind of something to really understand that it is a very unique gift that you are here within this lifetime. It's your home of where you make your magic, right? So it's your energy, it's your motor, it's your powerful center that is within you at all times. And when I say like these attributes can be present, and tapped into by the other energy types, but it's inconsistent for them. For you, it is a consistent, reliable, it's always got your back, it's always there for you every single day. So it's understanding that life force energy within you that feels like a real vibrational quality going on for your soul. It's like that gut voice that is always kind of there, always talking to you, has always got your back, can kind of like stick its hand up like in the moment and go, I love this. I love this. This lights me up. This delights me. This excites me. That's what's talking to you, your sacral chakra, particularly for women who have this defined within their chart. Kind of like experiment with some womb meditations. And I know that might sound a bit kind of out there, but remember our sacral chakra kind of taps into, all the attributes of our womb. Often it's where we can store trauma. So have some experimenting with sacral chakra specific meditations, womb meditations. I've had past clients that I've worked with on their human design charts that have talked about going and having some specific, if they've had trauma, that they have gone and had sort of womb or sacral chakra specific healings to assist with unblocking that chakra within them to heal that part of themselves energetically, because it is such an important part of you. And really you want to know that part of you, it's your second brain, so you want to know that part of you has received some real love, some real care, some real attention, because without that voice within you, that's when it's almost like that voice starts to get smothered. It starts to become harder to hear, which in turn as humans, we start to overthink, we start to question ourselves, we start to doubt everything. And so as a generator or a mani-gen, it's really important, no matter your configuration of your authority, to know that you've given some love to your sacral chakra, right? So also just understanding that this is a really powerful center within you. So this is what gives you that life force energy that's going on within you every single day, and that your energy is like way fucking more than a lot of other people, but consistently. So it's like the other energy types around you are designed for their energy to be either used efficiently or uniquely, or to come and go for the things that they're here to do. Whereas yours is like, it's a battery that runs all day and you need to kind of wear it out. So doing movement or exercise, that lights you up is really important. It's that kind of thing that allows you to fall into bed at the end of the day, like happily exhausted, right? Like you've kind of gone like, yes, I have done everything I wanted to do today. I am so just worn out, but from a really positive, happy place, and kind of just knowing that it's gonna be hard. Those moments when you're lying in bed and you feel like that, it's almost like lightning stuck inside a bottle within you, because you're like, I just feel icky and twitchy and I can't rest. And, chances are that means that you just haven't done enough to kind of burn all that off within you. And so, just to give yourself the permission to do that and to go with your natural rhythm. You might be a really early morning person, or you might be a night owl. Allow yourself the permission to play with your energy and start to see how it flows for you during the day. You'll have your own unique rhythm or expression of that energy that is true for you. And I'll also say the kind of caveat for you sacral beings is that rest is not a bad thing. We all need rest. We all need to have that opportunity to recharge. So often it's like the conditioning of the outside world that has got into maybe our minds, our heads, our hearts, as a sacral being that is like, oh no, your worth is connected to how much you do and how much you kind of achieve. And it's going to be your challenge to kind of flush out any of those shoulds around, I need to do more. I've committed myself to this thing that I need to keep doing for this person, even though every part of me hates what I'm doing. That will be the quickest way for you to start overwhelming yourself and burning yourself out, because your energy has been used in a way that is unaligned for you. So it's kind of like the knowing that you've got this unlimited potential for energy, but if you're trying to use it in the wrong way, that wrong for you, I'm meaning here. It's a bit like putting a square peg in a round hole, right? Like no matter how hard you try, your energy won't go there. It won't flow. And that's when it can really start to weigh on you as a sacral being. So it's making sure that you are doing things that actually align with you, trusting your authority, trusting your strategy, and going from there to see how that works for you. And as I say, your sacral chakra can connect to a couple of different places. It can be your G center, like we mentioned just before, that there's 4 different channels that can hook into, be the 34 to 10, the 5 to 15, 14 to 2, 29 to 46. It can also connect with your splenic center, which is kind of like there's a funny little hook that can happen between the 34 and the 57. It can also go the 27 to 50. And then over on the other side, you could have it hooked into your emotional center through the 59 to the 6. And then going straight down to the root chakra, you can have the 42 to 53, the 3 to the 60, the 9 to the 52. If those 3 channels, any of those are complete within you, the root chakra connecting to the sacral chakra from those 3 channels that go straight down, just know that those are going to feel pressure behind them. Like that root chakra energy coming up is going to feel pressurized. So it's kind of knowing that that's where, as we'll talk about in just a moment, if you are feeling like you've got all this energy to use, but there's like a pressure behind it, like, oh my God, I just have to get going. I just have to get started. You know, that will be coming from the root chakra. So it's kind of like understanding that there will be some things that you feel kind of a light energy, like, yeah, okay, I'll dive in and out of that, or I'm really lit up by it and I'm going to keep going and going and going and going. And then there'll be other places in your life where you'll feel this kind of urge or pressure that you have to act on it. That's not coming from your gut voice. It's coming from somewhere else. If that's the case, it's coming from your root chakra. So let's go talk about the root chakra. So this is a center that is the bottommost square within your human design chart. And now obviously you can have this defined and not have your sacral chakra defined, right? So this is where we're going to go back to talking about an attribute that is true for everyone but reflectors. Anyone can have the root chakra defined within them. This is the second of our pressurized centers. So the head, the crown that we talked about right at the start, and the root chakra is another place where our chi, our life force, is coming in, and it's put under pressure so that it can move up within us and eventually go obviously towards the throat, like we talked about earlier. So think of this as like where streams of energy are coming through and flowing through your body, but it's pressurized energy and it's got a pulsing energy to it. So it's kind of got its own unique pulse that will sort of like, imagine it a bit like a heartbeat, that it kind of like pulses on and off, right? So it's the characteristics here that if you have your root chakra defined, is this is our home of adrenalized energy, momentum, but also stress. So this is a home of, if this is defined within you, it's like a feeling of get up and go every single day. It's like a positive expression of adrenaline that is kind of fueling you. And it's a really authentic feeling for you that it's kind of always going on. But like I say, it's kind of pulsing on and off as a pressure sort of energy that's coming up and through you. And so obviously this can be connected to either your sacral chakra through those 3 channels that we just talked about before, or off to the left-hand side, there are 3 channels going towards the splenic center, the 54 to 32, the 38 to 28, the 58 to 18. And then on the right-hand side, you've got 3 channels that are going up towards the emotional center, the solar plexus, the 19 to 49, the 39 to 55, the 41 to 30. So you've got those different places that this can be connected. So that's when I say that it doesn't have to be the sacral chakra that this holds hands with. However, it can be the other centers, the spleen, it could be your emotional center as well. So for example, I listened to a podcast the other day where someone was talking about the fact that as a projector, there are only 2 centers that were lit up within them, with their splenic center and their root chakra, through one of those 3 channels that I just mentioned. And then everything else is white within their chart. So this is where it can get really beautiful to understand the different types of energy. So in their example, they were like, I have a really grounded energy because I have this root chakra and I've got this very sixth sense intuitive awareness, and they hold hands and it's like this pressurized, pulse coming through, but it's very grounded compared to someone like myself who has only got 2 centers defined, but mine are way up the top of my design, my mind, my ajna, and my throat, and everything else is white. And so for me, my experience is like I am so not grounded. Like that's not my default setting. I just want to float up, and like some days I feel like I'm just going to fly away because I feel so airy and so not tapped into the earth, and I have to do a lot of work to ground my energy. So if you have the root chakra defined within you, you will have that connection to, grounding yourself, feeling really grounded, and kind of allowing that really kind of earthy energy to come through with you, because it's a really beautiful gift. And just understanding that if you have this defined, you are kind of someone that can, without knowing it, sort of put pressure or stress on other people. So what I mean by that is that other people in your life that you come across who may have this center white within their chart, whether it's undefined, whether it's open, they are going to pick up on your root center, root chakra energy coming out. So it's kind of like almost being mindful of what you put out into the world, because obviously there can be a healthy expression of this pressure, this momentum, this kind of adrenaline, or there could be the out of alignment, unhealthy expression of stress that you're kind of just putting out into the world because you are constantly kind of feeling it, and then the rest of the world around you is going, whoa, I just feel so stressed out and I don't know why. And it could be that it's potentially coming from you. That's not to say that you're doing it on purpose at all. It's just saying that it's kind of almost having that wisdom or awareness to go, oh yeah, I can see what I am putting out into the world energetically. Because remember, you've got like a buffer here going on, right? It's defined for you. So you kind of like, you're not taking on other people's shit. You're not taking on their stress, but you've kind of got your own within you. And it can be that sort of like, I don't know when enough is enough. I'm kind of like just going and going and going and going because it's got that motor energy to it. So it's kind of the wisdom of knowing that, yep, there are going to be times when you're going to have to just take a break. Even if you're feeling that pressure to get going, to get growing, to get moving, to do the thing, right? If you feel that pressure, that's okay. You just have to sometimes have that wisdom to know, actually, you know what? I can put it down. I can put it to one side. And so a really good example here with knowing how the different centers can start to impact each other, right, would be that, say you've got 2 people in a relationship. One is a projector and they have their root center defined. The other is a generator who has obviously their sacral chakra defined, but their root center is undefined. When the 2 come together energetically, you've got the generator sort of emitting this life force energy that the projector is picking up. And through their undefined sacral chakra, they're absorbing that generator life force and kind of tapping into that energy, but it's inconsistent for them, right? If the generator goes away, they kind of slump and go, oh my God, what the fuck? Where did my energy all go? But while they're with the generator or connected, it could even be over FaceTime or, whatever, a projector will take on board that sacral chakra energy that the generator is emitting, and they will amplify it. They will absorb it and they will amplify it. So they'll kind of be running on this borrowed energy at a way more intense pace than maybe the generator is. That's kind of their consistent pace that they run on every single day. And then when you go down and look at the interaction from the root chakra energy, so the projector has got the root chakra energy that's like the adrenaline, the get up and go, the kind of pressure to keep going and to do and to do and to do. It's like the constant to-do list, right? And the generator doesn't have that defined within them. They've got an undefined root center. So they in turn are taking on board, absorbing and amplifying the projector's root chakra pressure and stress and adrenaline. So it's like the two kind of can feed each other, and it's beautiful when the two energies come together, because essentially the generator's energy will be grounded through that root chakra via their projector that they're around. And similarly, the projector is kind of able to use energy from the generator, and the wisdom comes from knowing, shit, we come together and we've got beautifully grounded energy that's a real life force source of energy, and that kind of like get up and go, we've got to get shit done energy from the root chakra. But do we need to be constantly working? At what point do we both just need to know when enough is enough? At what point do we need to know, actually, you know what? Rest is so important. We need to cultivate that space. We need to make sure that we're not burning each other out, because we're kind of come together and have this like supercharged combination going on. So I hope that kind of makes sense in terms of how these sort of centers, understanding what yours is, can be so empowering when you start to know and understand what other people's energetic makeup is as well. So now we're going to go and just talk about the final two chakras, the solar plexus, which is the emotional center, and then lastly the spleen, the splenic center. So these are the two that on your body graph you will see them as on the right hand side and the left hand side. They're triangle shapes that are pointing inwards towards the center of the body. So I'm going to talk first about the one that when you're looking at your chart is on the right hand side. And now this is the solar plexus, but really what you know to understand from here is that this is your emotional center and central nervous system really for the body, the energetic body. So if this is defined for you, you are basically, there are about 50% of the world's population have this center defined, and then about 50%, you know, have it undefined, roughly, give or take, or open, I should say, undefined or open white center. So if you have this defined within you, you will have emotional authority. And this is because out of all the chakras, when we talk about our authorities that we have, the solar plexus chakra, the solar plexus chakra, the emotional center within us, if this is defined, it takes precedent in like the hierarchy of the other centers that could be an authority. So that means that 50% of the world have got emotional authority. And what this means is that solar plexus that is beautifully lit up, connected to either, there's the two big, you know, long lines that go up, reach up towards the throat chakra, the 36 to the 35 or the 22 to the 12. You've got one that joins the heart, which is the 37 to 40. You've got the lower three that go down to the root chakra, the 30 to 41, 55 to 39, 49 to 19, or the one that goes kind of straight across from the point of the triangle, the 6 to the 59 that joins with the sacral. So you've got throat, heart, sacral or root that this could be connected to in any combination. You know, you can have more than one of those channels activated, obviously, within you, within your emotional authority. So what that means is that you experience within you a unique emotional wave that is going on all the time. It is a fixed chemical process inside you, within you, that essentially is always taking you on a ride from one end of the emotional spectrum to the other. Think of this as your emotional intelligence that you can always and consistently experience. Now, the trick with emotional authority is to empower yourself to understand the nuances of your wave, how your emotional wave looks and feels for you, because no two people with emotional authority experience their emotional wave the same way. Everybody's is different from each other, even though the characteristics of the waves are sort of, we've got our way of describing them. The way that actually sort of looks and feels for you is entirely unique to you. So what we have to understand is that emotions are actually a good thing. Emotions are a positive. Getting rid of all of those societal conditionings that might have come in to our mind, around emotions need to be smushed away. Emotions are not okay to express. You shouldn't be emotional. It's not successful to be an emotional person, So it's understanding the wisdom around emotions being okay and kind of learning to observe your own emotions, that wave that you're always going through at all times, without trying to control it, without trying to shut it away in a box, without trying to get into overthinking or controlling. A really great podcast episode I did just recently was with a beautiful soul called Kayla Anderson, and we talked a little bit about that emotional intelligence, living with emotional authority. So if you haven't listened to that episode, I would highly recommend going back and finding it and having a listen, because Kayla speaks beautifully to that experience of recognizing her emotional wave and how she came to that realization that actually it's okay for me to be feeling the way I'm feeling, rather than trying to control or smother that by using tools or other systems to try and alter your emotional state, without just going, actually, you know what? I'm going to allow myself to go through the ups and downs with the wisdom of observing it, rather than getting like swept away by the current of my emotions. And the thing with emotional authority is that there will always come a time when the wave levels out, right? You've got the wave goes up, goes down, and then there will be a moment or a period of time, depending on how your wave works, that will be the clarity. That will be the cool, calm, collected point that's in the, has gone back to neutral, right? When you level out, and then it will, you'll have a period of time when you sit in that space, and then it'll move again. Your wave will continue to flow. So you might be then back into the ups and into the downs. And the thing with having a defined emotional center is getting to understand that how this relates to your authority in terms of essentially buying yourself time, living in the new paradigm way of existing, which is empowering yourself to know that time is okay, buying yourself time, not having to rush into things, not feeling like you have to say yes to everything that comes along your way. It's really empowering to understand. So it's also knowing that the type of wave, the different channels have different kind of attributes that you experience the wave as. Now, I won't spend too long describing each of the characteristics of the waves, because we could be here all day doing this. This might be its whole own podcast episode, but I just wanted to touch on the fact that essentially the way the waves operate, or the generic description of how the waves operate, that will be felt individually for you. Kind of think of it from the channel that goes straight across to the sacral chakra, that 59 to the 6. That starts as like that type of wave is the kind of most subtle. And then as the lines kind of radiate out towards the outside, the outermost channels that link between the 41 to 30 and the 35 to 36, the waves becomes more and more kind of the range of the wave becomes greater. So the innermost one is the most subtle to experience, and then as you move to the outside, the wave kind of gets more. I don't like using the word extreme, but it's the variation in the emotion. It's like knowing that as high as you can go, as low as you can go, is basically how that wave starts to operate. So the names in which I use to describe these different waves as they kind of become more, the amplitude of the wave becomes greater and greater, is that the most subtle of these is what I term an elusive push and pull of emotion that is very much to do with kind of feeling like one moment you want to be around people, and then the next is like, I just don't want to see anyone. And it's very nuanced. It's very, if you only have this channel, you will almost more relate to being a non-emotional person, that you'll be like, nah, I'm chill. I'm like cool, calm, collected all the time. I'm not emotional, because it's very nuanced and it's very kind of, it's very elusive to get familiar with. And then obviously as we move out and towards the outermost channels, the next channels, the 40 to 37, the 19 to 49, is what I call the pressure builder. And this is a type of emotional wave that is a slow build. And it's kind of got like a pattern that as the pressure builds up, it gets to a certain point in time when it needs to be released, and that's the moment that you hit the down. So essentially think of it like a wave that is like rising slowly over time, and you're not aware that it's that pressure is kind of building within you, and then there'll be something that like just sets you off. And for example, you just suddenly have a big meltdown cry about something, and it's like the thing that made you cry is so disproportionate to what, so you might feel silly for like, it's literally that expression of like crying over spilled milk, but what you're expressing the pressure of as you hit the down of your wave is kind of everything as it's built up, whether that's over a week or whether that's over a month. It's like you're actually releasing pressure that's to do with 100,000 micro situations, and then once you've had that peak and you've had that pressure released in some way, shape or form emotionally, you hit the down, and then you kind of rise back up to the cool, calm, collected, and then that pattern is going to eventually start to repeat itself over time. So it's getting familiar with how that pattern might look or feel to you. Then you've got the next kind of variation of the wave as we move up the kind of scale of the range of emotional feelings it can evoke in you. So you've got the 39 to 55 and the 12 to 22, which I like to call the spontaneous ups and downs. So this is a type of wave that very much kind of moves along, and then suddenly out of nowhere you go way high, and then equally as quickly as you go way high, you go way low. So it's very much a wave that can be difficult to recognize and understand if you haven't had this kind of information handed to you to start to recognize within yourself that actually it's perfectly normal for you, if you have this wave, to hit highs and then hit lows and then kind of return to cool, calm, collected. But it's like it can all happen in the space of 20 minutes, right? Like it's really out of nowhere. There is nothing particularly that triggers it. It's just the chemical movement of within you at all times. Then lastly, the outermost channels, the 41 to 30 and the 35 to 36, I like to call this the elevator of expectation. So this wave acts as, again, it's the most kind of amplified up and the most amplified down. Think of this as like, the wave will be moving along in your kind of cool, calm, collected phase, and you're sitting on the ground floor, right? You're just chilling out in the lobby, don't have anywhere to go energetically. It's like everything's cool. You're just kind of like living life. Something comes along that is to do with expectation, whether that's a person, a situation, an opportunity. Your expectation suddenly starts to go, oh, I'm expecting this situation to have an outcome. There's expectation attached to it emotionally. That's when your elevator starts to go up, and it keeps going up to the very top floor of your high-rise building as the expectation rises. So an example might be that, say you are going to go on a date with someone. The expectation is rising within you, right? If this is your emotional wave, the expectation of, oh my God, they seem amazing. They seem like the perfect match. I wonder what our future together is going to be like, before you've even had the date, right? It's like the expectation of what it all could mean, be, look like, feel like. That keeps rising to the very top. You go on the date and none of your expectations were met. Not the other person's fault. It's because your natural wave, your emotional wave within you has all been triggered by that feeling of expectation. And so once the expectation's not met, that's the plunge. It's like the elevator just free falls into the basement. It goes beyond the lobby, beyond the ground floor. It hits the basement and hangs out there in a really low state because it's like, oh my God, my expectation was not met and now I don't know what to do. So it's understanding that that one is like a super high and then a super low, but it's all connected to your expectations. So I hope that kind of like explains how the different waves work. And obviously within you, there can be more than one of those waves going on because you can have more than one of those channels defined within you. So it's kind of understanding how that works and looks and feels for you. And really my kind of parting piece of advice, if you have if you have your emotional center defined, is to start to learn to observe what's going on, become curious about your emotions rather than trying to hide them all away and not feel them. Allow yourself to feel the feels. You might want to write like a bit of an emotional diary each day, like just record how you're feeling as you move through the week, the day, the month, and you can start to track how your emotional wave sort of shows up and how it looks and how it feels. Like become your own investigative observer about how your wave looks and feels for you, so you can become empowered by it rather than feeling like emotions are like this thing that you just society tells you you're not supposed to have, which is complete bullshit. So then lastly, the lovely splenic center, the spleen. This is over on the far left hand side. It's the triangle shape that's facing inwards. Now, if this is defined for you, you may have splenic authority or you may not. This can be defined within you and it doesn't necessarily have to be your authority. It's just kind of like another voice within you. So this is your center for your potential self-awareness or consciousness. Think of this as like our survival awareness. This is it's often in the way we will talk about the attributes from this center, the chakra, is kind of to do with our fears. And there's a podcast episode a while back that I did talking about all the different gates that come from this center so that you can have a look at your chart and work out which specific fears your soul is carrying around. That basically think of it as like, these are the things from the universe that you've come here with. We all come here with our own fears. And these are like your soul's biggest kind of things to focus on transforming in this lifetime. It's like these are your challenges to reframe and to get comfortable with, and to know that they will, if you have gates, lines coming off any of the numbers attached to the splenic center, these are yours to focus on transforming and reframing in this lifetime. So when you have this center defined, if it's colored in, you have what we would call like an internalized sixth sense going on, and it will be directly connected to your cognition. And now I did a parenting episode a while back that talked about the different cognitions that exist in terms of how it relates to children, but it can also be really empowering to know what your individual cognition is. So it might be taste, it might be smell, it might be inner vision, touch, so we all have within us a super sense, our most heightened sense. And this is the one that you can kind of most consistently rely on to guide you. So what you can understand here is that with this center defined, you have got essentially a real tap into intuition, picking up the signs, picking up the nuances, hearing that sort of voice within you. That kind of, a really good way that I actually heard this described just recently is like, the way your splenic center works is that, imagine you walk into a friend's party and there's just someone that you've never met before, but just straight away, it's like your spidey senses go, that person's not for me. And they might not even have had to say anything to you, but just straight away you've had this little voice within you that's like, nah, they're not for me. They might be for someone else. That's perfectly fine if you're friends with my friend, but I'll just hang out over here and do my own thing, because there's just something there that my intuition, my senses are telling me is we're not compatible. And it's not that there's a bad thing. It's just that that's your kind of inner like sort of barometer going, this is what I'm saying and this is what my piece of advice for you. So kind of just think of it like that in life, that it's sort of got that component to it. If you have this center defined for you, it can be really tempting to take your health for granted. You'll be that person who won't admit you're sick until you're like really, really, really sick. So the wisdom that comes from knowing this about yourself is to start to recognize that if you do get run down, if you do get burnt out, if you do get, sick, allow yourself time to completely heal. There's often some fears there that are attached to the reason why we don't allow ourselves the time and the space to rest and recoup and recharge and heal, whether that's to do with running out of time or fear of competition, fear of other people doing things better than we are. There's so many nuances and layers to it. So it's becoming aware of the fact that you are allowed to rest. You are allowed to take care of yourself, and it is okay to allow yourself time to heal and to look after yourself and to self-care and to practice all those things that, we often hear talked about, but can be often really hard to recognize and actually put into practice within ourselves. And of course, your splenic center can be connected to, like we just talked about, the root chakra before. There's 3 channels there. Could be connected to your sacral chakra by the 50 to 27. Can also go right across to your heart chakra, the 44 to 26. Can come up and also connect to your sacral chakra, through that little hook, the 57 to 34. Can go to your G center via the 57 to 10, or can go all the way up to your beautiful throat chakra by the 48 to 16 or the 57 to 20. So it's kind of just knowing that there are quite a few different ways in which your spleen can also be connected to the other centers within chakras within your chart as well. So there we have it. We've covered the different chakras and centers that if they are defined within your chart, those will be the attributes, the characteristics that are consistently within you. And like I say, if you didn't have many of these actually defined within your chart, that's okay. We're going to be talking about those over the coming weeks. So I hope that for the ones that are defined, are lit up, are colored in within your chart, that this was useful, that this supports you in kind of having a bit of a quick reference to understand what each of those sort of mean, what they give you, what you can tap into all the time, the places where you can give yourself a bit of self-compassion, a bit of love, and I can't wait to talk more about centers and chakras with you. So I would love to hear any feedback, if there's been any aha moments, if you've had any kind of light bulbs go off as you've been listening in. And maybe it's not even about you. Maybe it's your child's chart. Maybe it's your partner's chart. Maybe it's your colleague or bestie's chart that you've looked up and gone, oh my God, they have a defined root chakra and now I understand and it all makes sense. There's so many beautiful ways that this information can come into play. So once again, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for listening. I'm so grateful for you. If you are really keen to connect with more people who are into human design, come over and join the Facebook group. There'll be a link in the show notes with this episode. We'd love to have you there. And as always, enormous hugs through the microphone, and I will see you on the next episode, lovely soul.